How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of LandO's Logic. You thought I was going to say lock-ins, but no, it is another edition of LandO's Logic. This is a series that we've done previous. It's not one that we do all the time, where we take a very, very in-depth look at different subjects that are going on throughout Call of Duty Esports. And today, we are diving very, very deep. Let me tell you that right now. We are going into the depths of what are the current situations and scenarios when it comes down to our top 8 seeds. If you are a little confused, you're like, hey, what exactly does this mean? I thought all teams were going to champs. They're not. Let me be the first one to tell you, not all 12 teams are going into champs. Only the top 8 seeds will be moving into champs. Now, the reason why we're talking about this currently is because we're getting ready to move into our fourth major, our fourth and final major, the qualifiers leading up into the actual major, which will be played in New York. There's a lot of scenarios going on right now. A lot of matches are at a very high importance because of the amount of teams that are on what I call the bubble. Not as if it's a new term by any means, but I'm just calling it the bubble. It's a very interesting situation right now. 7 teams, I believe right now, are in a very interesting situation where they have the ability to fluctuate upwards or to go downwards. I did just get back from the Toronto major. I literally thought of this idea while I was on the plane home. And so if you guys would like to leave this video a like, you can feel free to do so. Share it, comment, whatever you'd like to do. Would greatly appreciate it, because this is basically what I've been working on. This has been my passion project for like the last 2 days since I've been home, is trying to work out all the scenarios, get as best of an idea as we can, and to list out match schedules, point breakdowns, etc., to give you guys the best understanding of what teams to look out for and the importance of a lot of these games. Now, like I said, this is going to be a primary focus on the New York Subliners. This is going to be really focused on all teams, but them more specifically out of the other ones, just because they have a very interesting path right now. A lot of people are like, okay, is it even possible for them to make it? And I will tell you right now, it is possible, but you have to stay here for a little while to figure out exactly how that all works out. So, as I said, let's go and take a look right now at the current standings before we do anything else. Let's go and take a look at where all of the teams stand. Toronto Major just ended. This is where things are lining out for the moment. So right now, it's the Atlanta FaZe sitting very firmly at the top. You can just go and mark it down in your book. If you're an Atlanta FaZe fan, they are 100% making it to champs. If they didn't even win a single series, whether at Major 4 qualifiers or at the Major 4 tournament, they are good to go. As far as I am concerned, they are good to go. Just under them, we have OpTic Texas at number 2. Obviously, still sitting very, very good when it comes to overall standings. Just below them, we have Seattle Surge, who are off of a great W at the Toronto Major, and my eyes have solidified themselves when it comes into top 8, no question. Then we have the London Royal Ravens, who will be one of our bubble teams. The Toronto Ultra, off of a great major tournament for them, really turned up. Below them, we've got the Boston Breach, who are also going to be on the bubble, and I will say the same things for basically everybody but Paris from here. LAG at the 7th spot, LAT at the 8th spot, just barely eclipsing the top 8 margin for now. Minnesota Røkkr hot on their heels. Same thing with Florida Mutineers. Both those teams are tied at 110. And then in that 11th seed are the New York Subliners. Paris Legion, I don't know if they're officially eliminated. I probably should have made like a little teaser that, hey, it could be possible, but it's just not. I don't think it's even possible at this moment. But so now that we know our current standings, let's talk about the teams that we're going to be touching on more specifically in this video. So as I said, these are going to be the teams on the bubble: our number 4, our number 6, our number 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 seeds. To me, all have the ability to fluctuate, move upwards, move down, etc. And those teams are the London Royal Ravens, Boston Breach, LA GUERRILLAS, LA THIEVES, Minnesota Røkkr, Florida Mutineers, and the New York Subliners. So what I have done, right, is tried to predict as much as I can, to try to predict the Major 4 qualifiers the best way possible, to know what the standings will look like heading into Major 4. Because again, it's not going to be possible for me to predict every single matchup. There are a lot of games that are going to be unbelievably difficult to call. So what I have done, as you'll see now, is labeled these as expected results. So the ones in green are the teams that I expect to win, the ones that are covered in those orange boxes, and my eyes are questionable. Now you could have a few more questionable. You could say, oh, there's no doubt that team is going to win. It's just the way that I've labeled it. All right, it's just the way that I went through it. I tried to look at these matches as in depth as I could and label them the way that I think that they will go. Now obviously it's not going to be perfect, and by no means are these going to be accurate specifically, but it does give us the best information that we can. Like, that really is the storyline for this video, is like, we've done the best studies that we can, but as we all know, in statistics and stats, they always have the ability to be wrong. So you see these expected results. Now you will see them reflected in the overall standings. So now we'll go and take a look at a graphic where it says current points on the left with the guaranteed points on the right. So what that means is the current standings that you just saw are on that left side of the graphic. On the right side of the graphic, those are what I believe the results will look like given the matches that I just showed you on screen. So that's not every game, right? There are 9 games that I have not predicted yet, because I think that they are just honestly toss-ups, and without me trying to get my own opinion in it too much, this is the way that things are shaping up right now. So the fluctuations that I think are basically guaranteed, but that could alter a few things, are first, the 4th and 5th seed. You see them at the top. Toronto Ultra, I think, will overtake the London Royal Ravens, and I will break down each team more in depth as we go on. Also, I believe that the LA Thieves and Minnesota ROKKR will move up into that 7th and 8th seed, while LAG will start to move downward. So I think that those are guaranteed, and based off of the matches that I just showed you on the screen, right? I showed you the entire slate for the Major 4. These are the results that I think could happen. Now, again, there could be a lot more shifts because there are 9 very, very important games that I have not fully listed out. And you'll also notice the point totals on the left are somewhat different when it comes to the right? How does New York have 70 points? Now they have 90 points. It's because, and that major graphic I showed you, I only had them winning 2 of those series. Now there are some that have not been predicted yet, etc. So I know it's kind of confusing, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at every team, and I'm going to show you, along with this graphic, the way that I have everything predicted for the moment. So like I said, what you see on the right looks to be the way that those results will go, but it's not guaranteed, as I've said. I feel like I just have to clarify that like 100 times just to make sure we're all on the same page. So Atlanta FaZe, they look great, right? 4-0 is what I have them listed as in this graphic. So I have them at least getting 300 points is really a good way to say it. I have them at least getting 300 points. I think they'll look fine to have that first seed. There's no question about it. OpTic Texas, they are currently listed as 3-0. I think they'll be just fine to lock up that second seed. It's going to take quite a bit for them to overtake the Atlanta FaZe, given the point disparity. And the reason why I made these predictions is also so you can kind of understand Atlanta FaZe has 4 very favorable games. In my opinion, OpTic, I think, has 3 very favorable games. And there are obviously questions on them as well. Illy, Prolute, what's going to happen with them? That has not been announced as of the recording of this video. So there could be some fluctuation there. Seattle Surge, they are listed right now as 2-0 when it comes down to the bracket. And what I have expected for them, I think they will, at the very minimum, be walking away with 20 points. I do think that they have a good chance of eclipsing the 200-point mark, which would be great for them. They turned up at the right time. Let me tell you that right now. They have matches this qualifier versus Atlanta, Minnesota, and New York. So again, the one thing that is interesting about Seattle is that they could be caught by Toronto. They could be caught by London, by Boston. You know, there are teams that could catch them and maybe lower them as low as like 5th or 6th seed, but that would be, you know, a full-on collapse at that point. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and talk about the teams from there, which will start off with the London Royal Ravens. Everybody is eyeing this team as what could be the fall off. And this is very important. If you are, you know, a fan of some of the teams, if you're a fan of Minnesota, Florida, New York, LA Thieves, LAG, I mean, teams who are really right in that 7-11 range, a lot of teams are banking on the idea that London are going to have a fall off. They did not look great, right? Ever since they've dropped, Gizmo, ever since he's gone to Challengers, they've gone 3-7 in total series. They're not winning hard points. They've won 4. I think they've gone 4-12 in their last 16, which is not great for them whatsoever. And to me, they're an easy team to call that's going to be on the bubble. I predict that they will be at least 1-3 when it comes down to some of these early matches. I have them losing to Toronto, Minnesota, and Atlanta, beating the GUERRILLAS, and then they have a questionable series, is what I will label it, versus Florida, which has not been decided as of yet. Now, when it comes down to the Ravens, I don't see them having a positive record, which again is a good sign if you are a fan of a team who is anywhere below them. And like I said, this is a team that a lot of people expect could very well drop into the bottom 12, or I should say the bottom 9 through 12. if they don't pick up the pace. Now, I personally think that we could see a roster change go down with the London Royal Ravens, which will dramatically change things up. And as we said, if you are 9, 10, 11, Minnesota, Florida, New York, you need 3 teams to filter in. You need 3 teams that are going to lower while they are all trying to go on the rise. London looked to be in a pretty good position. I mean, for the most part, it's just try to get at least, I'd say, 1-2 victories when it comes down to the qualifier play, get a W or 2 when it comes to land, and I think they'll be in a pretty safe position. But hey, you know, things could happen. Now, Toronto Ultra are not technically on the bubble, but because they are listed right now as the 5th seed, I thought it would just be, you know, it's important to talk about them. I have them listed in this graphic as 3-1. They're obviously looking their best right now. Had a great Toronto major. Everybody seems to be turning up. The ARs are looking great. The Search and Destroy is elite. The Hardpoint is only improving. The only loss that I have them having right now is to Atlanta. I have them beating London, LAG, and Boston with a questionable series versus OpTic Texas. Again, with the questions around Illy and Prolute, etc., I have that one as a questionable series right now. Well, they still need to play well. I think they've got a guaranteed 170 points, as you see on the graphic there, in Major 4 qualifiers, and I think they look great coming into that Major 4 tournament. I don't think London is I don't think Toronto is a team to worry about. If you are London, rather, you do need to worry about them because they are right on your heels, and I believe will no doubtably overtake them for that 4th seed. So now we'll move on to the Boston Breach. A very scary situation right now for Boston. You see them when it comes down to the overall standings. Not great. You know, as we said, they are 10 points away, 20 points away from being in basically tied for the 10th seed. At the same time, 20 more points would tie them with the 4th seed. So they are in very shaky waters right now. And obviously it feels like they've fallen off across the board in a number of different areas. It feels like Search Destroy is no longer guaranteed. Hardpoint Control just aren't there. And then the productivity of some of the best players that they have on the team aren't there right now. Methodz goes from, I think, the #1 KD in Major 2 to like a bottom 30, 35 KD when it comes down to the entirety of Major 3. Arguably, in my opinion, they have got the toughest schedule. So they have got some very difficult matchups, which again comes at the worst time if you are a Boston Breach fan. So it's not looking great. They've got OpTic, LAT, Seattle, and Toronto. The only one that I think possibly, and I do have it listed as going their way, would be versus the LA Guerrillas, but that may not even be guaranteed either. So I have them listed right now as 1-4. But again, you got OpTic, you got Thieves, you got Seattle, you got Toronto. Those are not going to be easy matchups by any means for a team like the Boston Breach. And again, they could be one of those rosters that starts to filter downward, that starts to lower when it comes down to the overall standings. Then we'll go and move on to the LA Guerrillas, team who was obviously off of a W at Major 2, yet to pick up their mojo, right? They drop Spark, they pick up Gunless, and still things just are not in a great place right now. I have them listed as 0-5. Now, again, that could change, but another rough schedule for one of these teams who are on the bubble. So this is why these predictions, these the storylines heading into Major 4 are so interesting. It's not as if Boston and LAG have, you know, easy schedules. No, they're going to be facing off against some very, very solid ones. So there is an opportunity for a decline. And again, if you are 9, 10, 11, maybe 12, you are eyeing up. Who are we going to replace, right? Who are we going to jump into the top 8 for? Who is going to jump into the bottom 4 for us? And it very well could be Boston, and it very well could be the LA Guerrillas. As I said, listed with an 0-5 schedule. Toronto, New York, Atlanta, Boston, and London all to deal with. Now, I think they have the chance to beat Boston or London Royal Ravens. If they do that, that is crazy, because it feels like LAG are facing off all kinds of different bubble teams. Again, they've got Toronto to face off against, who I don't think technically is in the bubble, but they've got New York, they've got Boston, and they've got London. You see where all 3 of those teams are listed. Those are the reasons why these games are so crucial. Every single series that LAG plays will have a massive impact on whether or not they stay put, teams overtake them, and ultimately where Minnesota, Florida, and New York land. If LAG has a great stage, they go 2-3, it makes their lives that much more difficult. If they go 0-5, that is it feels like the gates open for sure for LAG to drop when it comes down to the bottom 4 and not making the champs. We'll go and move on to the LA Thieves. I have them listed right now as at 2-1. So again, you see the left to the right. They do, in my opinion, will overtake the LA GUERRILLAS when it comes down to that 7th seed, maybe even overtake the 6th seed over Boston Breach. They had a very typical performance at the Toronto Major, had a crazy turnaround after beating the Minnesota ROKKR, destroying them when it came down to Search Destroy, facing off against Atlanta FaZe just 2 days later, getting 3-0 smacked by them. An hour later, they face off against OpTic Texas, and they beat OpTic Texas. So again, typical performance from them. It was massive that they were able to get some points on the board. Obviously, taking ahead 2 top caliber rosters gives them a few points moving in before we head into major number 4. And what a spot to be in, right? 10 points away from tying with 6th place, 10 points away from falling to a tie with 10th place. Now, I do have them losing to Atlanta. I have them beating Paris and Boston, but I have them with questionable series versus Florida and New York. So LAT to me will almost be like the gatekeepers, if you will, because I think that they are the most talented team. From 6, 7, and 8, I think LAT are the best team of those 3. Now, I think that LAT are almost the gatekeepers, if you will, of the Major 4 qualifiers, because they are going to be taking on both Florida and New York, the teams who are trying to get on the upward trend along with Minnesota. Wins versus LAT are huge. Losses versus LAT only set you back that much more and limit your opportunity, like I said, of getting into those top 8 seeds. So some big games I would be looking out for: LAT versus Florida and LAT versus New York. To me, those could be some of the most important games that we've got in the entirety of the Major 4 qualifiers. And you could be thinking, well, like what? Atlanta, OpTic, Seattle, Toronto, those games. No, I'm looking at the games that ultimately will define the way the seeds fall. Really the goal, to me at least, for the Thieves is win the games you're supposed to, beat either Florida and New York, and you've got yourself a positive record. I think for Thieves, the ultimate goal is to at least go 3-2. If you go 3-2, you'll have, I think, 150 points. You'll be in a really good position. You should move up a decent amount, probably have that 6th seed, I would imagine. And then you're in a LAN environment where we know the LA Thieves thrive a majority of the time. I think they have the 3rd highest average LAN placement out of OpTic and FaZe, who sit just above them, which is very wild, I know. But LA Thieves are a consistent team when it comes down to a LAN environment, not online. So as I said, the goal, if you are a Thieves fan, win 3 games, beat Paris, beat Boston, and beat either Florida or New York, and you'll be in a really good position. So as I said, get that positive record moving into LAN where they are ultimately way more comfortable. Next team is going to be the Minnesota ROKKR. Now, I have them listed as 2-0 with 3 games being ultimately questionable. Now, the reason for that is because we know heading into the Major 3 tournament, in the qualifiers, Minnesota were perfect. 5-0. I think they go 15-3 in map record count, which is unbelievable. And then they fall short. They fall somewhat flat when it came down to the Toronto Major. Search Destroy cost them versus the Thieves. I think they 3-0 Boston, which is fine. And then they move on to face off against Toronto and get 3-0'd by the Ultra on home soil, and when it comes down to the Battle of the North. Now, I have Minnesota beating London and Paris, which I think if London do make a roster change, that may not be guaranteed, but I do have them beating both of those teams for now, with questionable matches versus Florida, Seattle, and OpTic. As I said, it's difficult to know where Minnesota sits right now, and they are, without question, to me, along with Florida, probably the biggest wild cards, because if Minnesota has another great qualifier, they can absolutely shoot up the standings. I mean, imagine if they go 4-1, what that would do to their overall record. Again, that would be 2. They'd have, 150 points. That would, just shoot them up the standings if they were able to walk away with those points. So again, just a huge opportunity for the Minnesota ROKKR to make something happen. On the same side, right, they sit right now in the 9th seed. A 2-3 record, I don't know if that gets it done. They're going to have to really perform when it comes to LAN. 3-2, there's definitely a chance. If you are Minnesota and Florida, there is absolutely a chance to overtake the top 8. Let me just go ahead and say that right now. There is definitely a chance for it, but you're going to have to take advantage of your series versus Boston LAG. Take advantage of what could be their shortcomings. And as I said, a very difficult schedule, 4, 6, and 7. Now we're going to move on, right? And last thing I will say about Minnesota before we jump to Florida, to me, Minnesota needs to have a winner's spot. They need to have a winner's spot when it comes to Major 4, at least a 3-2 record, with the struggles that they have had in LAN, whether it's been at the Pro-Am or whether it's been at Major 3, they need to have at least 2 lives, right? I mean, they can't have 1 life when it comes to LAN, just because it feels like that team has not shown their stuff yet. If they have a great, qualifier record, online record, it only gives them that much more of a buffer to work with when they come to LAN. And maybe 1 match victory, 2 match victories, that could be what solidifies them in getting the 7th, 8th seed, and so on and so forth. So let's jump to Florida, the 10th seed, tied right now in overall points, but because of tiebreakers, Minnesota does technically sit above them. I don't know, man. It's an interesting spot right now for the Florida Mutineers. I have them losing versus New York, which is a massive series for obvious reasons, because New York is going to do their best to try to overtake the 2 teams above them. Specifically, the Florida Mutineers, in my eyes, would be their target. I have the Florida Mutineers beating Paris, and questionable series versus Minnesota, London, and LAT. So I have them listed as 1-1. You just never know what to expect with the Florida Mutineers. Again, another team who wouldn't surprise me if we do see maybe some roster changes happen. I think there's definitely a chance with London. I think there's a chance with Boston. I think there's a chance with LAG. I think there's a chance with Florida. To me, those are the teams that I expect to at least think about making some moves. If not, will make moves moving into Major 4. So that is something to think about. I'm not sure who Florida would obviously bring in versus, who would stay, leave, etc. But that also could just spice things up even more for Florida if that does end up happening. Like I said, you just never know what Florida we're going to get. Sometimes it feels like they're going to have a phenomenal bracket. It feels like they're going to play really great. I've invested many times into the Florida team. Sometimes I've been like, okay, I'm just not sticking with the Florida train. It's just not going to happen. And it feels like every time I always get it wrong. I don't know. When it comes down to the matches that they've got, I really don't think that a lot of them are going to be favorable. Versus LA Thieves, you could make a story there. But I think the Thieves just look stronger than them. London Royal Ravens, I think, is a very questionable series, very up in the air. I like Minnesota more than them when it comes to online. So realistically, I feel like Minnesota, if they finish 2-3, which I think would be honestly their best and the most likely scenario, they would be at 130 points, and it would come down to making a run on LAN and hopefully sneaking into that 7th and 8th seed, which again would come down in my eyes to Boston LAG. How much farther do they fall? Moving forward, Florida would be below Boston. They would probably be, I don't know, maybe overtaking LAG. So I think there's a really good chance that Florida probably grabs the 9th seed. And then it's just, like I said, it comes down to making a run on LAN, trying to overtake the Boston Breach. Would be, and then trying to hold off maybe a team like New York. That to me is the most likely scenario right now for Florida. Probably a 2-3 record. Again, 3-2 is great. I think it ultimately is going to come down to what Florida we see come LAN time. Now, the team that we have been really making this video about, is it possible, right? Is it possible that a team who has not won a single series when it comes down to major LAN tournaments, can they actually qualify for champs? The tournament that they won, by the way, they didn't get any points for. That is the reason why they sit in the 11th seed. They didn't get any points for the Pro-Am. There were no points awarded when it came down to that tournament. So can a team who technically in official LAN matches has not won a single one, can they make it to champs? Is it possible? Have I made this video for no reason? Is Crimsix, right, the GOAT of Call of Duty, gonna miss his first ever Call of Duty championships after finishing guaranteed top 3 since the CDL has formed? Can a team that started off 0-13 in Hardpoint make it to the final event at the end of the season? Like I said, surely I wouldn't make this video for no reason. Is it possible? It is. It is definitely possible for New York to make it. Now we will break down the paths, as I will label it, for the New York Subliners. So the matches that New York are going to have, I will go ahead and list them here for you. You'll obviously see them on the screen. So New York's got some interesting games, and these are also going to be in order. So to me, they start off with a huge game versus the Florida Mutineers. I expect for New York to take it, but if we do see some roster changes for Florida, some roster changes for LAG, there could be, an interesting mix thrown into it. I think that New York will ultimately take those because of their strengths. I think they look better than both of those teams. But again, that match versus Florida is huge. As we talked about, Florida, they need to get 2 Ws at the very least. That'll put them in a good position, and it'll come down to how far they can make it when it comes to LAN. For New York, like I said, they need these 2 W's, and there is no doubt about them. If they drop versus Florida, if they drop versus LAG, one or the other, it makes their run almost have to be perfect. Now, the series versus Seattle, questionable for me. It's going to have to be a must win. The series versus OpTic, which again, they beat OpTic Texas when it came down to the Major 3 qualifiers. They did beat them there, but I think they did lose to them most recently. Actually, I forget. I don't even know. Anyway, I have them losing to OpTic Texas. Now, this is a difficult one to call. It's just one that I expect to go OpTic's way. I think they'll look better with iLLeY. I think iLLeY will be in the lineup. That is just my call. Again, that one could also be up in the air. And the series versus LA Thieves, to me, is absolutely up in the air, because that will be the final match. To my knowledge, New York will play the very first game of the Major 4 qualifiers, and they will play the very last game of the Major 4 qualifiers. And as I said, those 2 games are must wins. The way that I would label this is New York cannot afford to have a 2-3 record, because if New York have a 2-3 record, they basically have to win the entirety of Major 4. If they have a 3-2 record, that still may not do it, but they'll have to place incredibly well. If they have a 4-1 record, that would be, to me, the sweet spot where they could, if they can make a run at Major 4, there is a very good chance that they could eclipse the top 8. Now, I will break it down more. What New York needs, right? This is ultimately what New York needs to happen in order for them to rise into that top 8, which is, like I said, guys, it is not going to be easy at all. They need Florida to struggle, and it looks like they will do. I think at the best, the Mutineers will have a 2-3 record, and then they need them also to struggle a little bit when it comes down to LAN. Realistically, New York has to have 2 teams, if not 3 teams, fall that are currently in the top 8. And I know we've listed out those teams. I think Boston and LAG are, to me, the guaranteed 2. I think the 3rd would be the London Royal Ravens. But as I said, if London just has a 2-3 record, win maybe, honestly, 4 games combined when it comes down to qualifier versus LAN, I think London are good. So New York are going to need either 2 teams, if not 3. If it's going to be Boston and LAG, they might have to overtake Florida, which again, in the current standings, is not going to be easy to do. Same thing with Minnesota. I just think that Florida is more likely to be the team that they have to rely on to overtake. Now, if London does skyrocket, as I said, that could be the team, the 3rd roster that they overtake, but it's probably going to come down to LAN in which that happens. Now, the most possible points, right, that New York can get, the most possible points that they can finish with if they go perfect. So if they go 5-0, and if they finish first when it comes down to the Major 4 tournament, they will finish with 185 points, which looks great. But as I said, it is not going to be easy to do that. Now, I will break down a few more things. If New York finishes 5-0, that would put them at 120 points. If they finish with the top 3 placement at Major 4, that'll put them at 160. I don't know 100% if that gets it done. I think that's probably the sweet spot. If they go 4-1, that would put them at 110 points. With the top 3 placement, that would put them at 150. Again, very scary territory to be in if you finish with 150. If New York finishes 3-2, that would put them at 100 points in a top 3 placement. Added with that would put them at 140 overall points. I do not think that that gets it done. So that is the reason why I've talked about it. If New York goes 3-2, they need top 3 at least to make it a chance, and I don't think that is enough. So to me, what the scary territory is if they go 3-2, I think it's going to have to be a 4-1 record. If New York finishes 3-2, they have to win the entire thing in my eyes. If they go 4-1, there is a chance. I would say, bare minimum for New York to have a very good chance of making into the top 8 would be first a 4-1 record and a top 3 placement. That would put them at 150 overall points. That to me is a good spot to be in. It gives you a really good chance, but that may not be enough. I think the magic number that I would say ultimately is 160 points. I think 160 points would be ultimately what this comes down to. I think that is what will decide who ends up making it forward, whether that's the 7th seed, the 8th seed, etc. Obviously, we can talk about tiebreakers. That's just an impossible conversation to have right now. But I think 160 is the number that gets you over the finish line. 150, I think, brings it very close. And I think 140 would just fall short. So as I said, to me, the perfect way for New York is to have a 4-1 qualifier and then to finish top 2, top 3 on LAN. That would put them at the 150 to 160 point range. And then obviously, you know, if you go 3-2 but win the entire thing, or if you go 3-2 and finish top 2, that would be great. That'd also put you at the same point total. You get my point. I think top 3 is a must when it comes down to Major 4 at their own home series, which is also going to make this that much more interesting. New York is going to be in their own LAN environment, which is going to be crazy. They're going to have the crowd behind them. So there is a chance. As I said, I hope that this breakdown brought you the information that you needed. And kind of in conclusion for this, the way that I look at the standings are the first 3 teams are good. Atlanta, OpTic, Seattle, they're going to stay there. Toronto, to me, are going to stay there. London are the most unlikely team that is on the bubble, I think, to plummet to the bottom 4. I just don't see it happening. I think it would have to be a full-on collapse, like a 1-4 first-rounded type of performance, which is possible. I don't think that is gonna occur. Boston, LAG, the 2 teams to look out for who are trying. If you are, you know, in the bottom 3 teams, 9, 10, 11, you're eyeing up Boston and LAG to be the 2 teams who fall. If one of those teams have a great performance, if one of those teams just happen to turn up, which is definitely possible, it will massively limit who is going to be able to move on forward, and it would put pressure on the Thieves, who I don't think will succumb. I don't think they're going to lose their top 8 spot by any means. I think LAG are the guaranteed. I think Boston is number 2. And then maybe you're looking at Ravens, maybe you're looking at Thieves. I just think that the Ravens would be the more likely of the 2. If Thieves have a slow qualifier, though, that could also be a chance. I think that Minnesota ultimately makes it. I think what we really see is Minnesota overtakes LAG. Florida and New York are battling it for the life of them to overtake Boston's position, to maybe overtake LA Thieves' position. And then obviously if London or LA Thieves fall, there could be a chance where we have a 3-team swap, 9, 10, and 11, basically for 4, 6, and 7, or 6, 7, and 8. That to me is the way to look at this moving forward. As I said, I put up the games for you guys to watch. To me, the ones in orange are the ones that you have got to keep your eye on. The ones that are going to mean a whole lot. But as I said, New York are the most interesting story right now that we've got when it comes down to Major 4, when it comes down to champs, a team that has the greatest player of all time, who is trying to make it to champs. They sit 11th in the standings, and they're basically going to try to double their current point total in one major. Is it possible? Is it feasible? It is. But is it actually going to happen? That will be the question to ask. Again, it's going to have to be a full-on turn-up type of performance from the Subliners, where, again, they're going to be on LAN in their own home environment, and that could be the chance. But it's all going to start with the qualifiers. That is going to do it for this video. I know it was a long one. I know that we spoke a lot. We mentioned a lot of interesting phrases. We said a lot of points. We broke down a lot of things. But if you made it to this point in the video, I greatly appreciate it. I hope you guys did enjoy the breakdown, just to kind of let you guys know exactly where things sit for the moment, the likelihoods of different things, the scenarios in which the way that certain teams look right now, and more specifically, the path for New York. It is there, it is in front of them, and now it is known. The possibility is there, but again, it is going to take one of the best runs that we've seen from a team, probably in CDL history, to make it happen. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I hope you've enjoyed watching LandO's Logic, which again is a little bit of a different series. LandO's Lock-ins is going to be breaking down the games as well every single week when it comes into pick'ems. You know, maybe champs, or, you know, I should say, I'm hoping moving into champs that we have a better record than we do right now, but you know, I'm expecting some good things. I'll just put it that way. I'm expecting some good results when it comes down to the Major 4 qualifiers. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. I'll see you for LandO's Lock-ins very soon, and maybe another LandO's Logic before and as we head into champs at the end of the season. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.